Hello, Facebook Live audience for the Arizona Chamber. It's Brandy Wells here today. I have some really special guests. We have Caroline Harris, who heads tax policy for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and Ed Mortimer, who heads transportation and infrastructure policy at the U.S. Chamber. Caroline and Ed, thank you so much for visiting with us today.
Glad to be with you.
Thank you for doing the Lunch and Learn as part of your trip to Arizona.
Thanks for having us.
It was a pleasure. I really enjoyed hearing from both of you. So I'm really excited that our Facebook Live audience will get a little bit of the information that we got during the Lunch and Learn.
Great.
So I want to start with you, Caroline. We've got a special congressional election here in Arizona coming up tomorrow, believe it or not. And we've seen a lot of TV ads from outside groups, and one of them claims that the federal tax package that was adopted late last year really only benefits the top 1%, and that it's a bad deal for the rest of America. What's your response to an advertisement like that?
Sure. Well, I'm going to respond with facts. I think that's the best way to respond. So I'm going to note that we have seen a general reduction in all 7 of the income brackets. So we're seeing a reduced rate across the board. We're seeing that doubled standard deduction, which is going to help the average American family. And actually studies have found, or our numbers have found, that a family of 4 with $73,000 of income is saving about $2,000 a year under the new tax system. So I'm going to say that in addition to that, we're seeing a pro-growth tax policy on the business side go through that benefits American families and American workers. So I think across the board, this is a big win for Americans, including that middle class that's such an important part.
Right, $2,000 is huge. That's
a lot of money back in the pocket. That's something you can take. We've heard people talk about taking their families on vacation, being able to buy different things for their kids, being able to buy something for their home. These are all positive things. Putting money back into Americans' pockets that they've earned, it's their money, giving it back to them or letting them keep it more correctly, it is a positive. And that's not small. It's not a small amount of money.
So. I don't think so either. And it also feels good to receive more money. It's a morale builder.
To keep more, right, absolutely. To keep
family.
More of your money. I mean, I think that's positive.
I agree. Wonderful. Good to hear that. So I have one more for you.
Sure.
So at the Arizona Chamber, we've been harping on the U.S.'s lack of competitiveness internationally when it came to our corporate income tax rate. How would you say that we stack up now that things have changed?
Sure. So we were at 35% before. When you considered state and local taxes as well, we were almost at 40%. We were significantly out of sync with our global competitors. We're now at 21% on that corporate side. That became effective at the beginning of this year. With the state and local tax burden, we're at about 25.7%. That puts us just around the average of the OECD countries. So we are finally more globally competitive and globally consistent with the countries we're trying to compete with. And I think this is a huge positive and a huge long overdue modernization for the tax code.
It's huge. I think we used to say there's economic malpractice to have a 35%.
Absolutely. And I would say that people were investing here and doing business here despite the tax code before. Now we have a tax code that is welcoming capital into this country. So I think it's very exciting to see these changes and to see us become more globally competitive.
I agree. 35 to 21, and even if it goes roughly 25 and you add on the other burden, that's fantastic. That's huge.
Absolutely.
That means a lot of savings. Thank you very much for the response.
You.
So, Ed, we're going to move on to you for a second.
Sure.
We've been thinking a lot about transportation at the Arizona Chamber. We talk about it quite a bit. One of the challenges that we're dealing with here is that the buying power of the revenues that our gas tax generates, it's eroding over time. Cars are more fuel efficient, there's less gas being purchased. What are some options that other states have been considering to make sure that they're capable of paying for transportation infrastructure long term that you've seen?
Great question. And we need to modernize this infrastructure. So how to pay for it is something we've certainly been looking at very closely. There are a lot of states that are doing pilot programs for a vehicle mile tax. So we'll get away from necessarily the gasoline tax and getting to more whatever energy source you're using to move your vehicles, that's how you'll pay. So there's about 10 pilot programs around the country going on. I just testified in front of the House Transportation Committee on this, though, a few weeks ago, and the lead of the Western User Fee Alliance, Michael Lewis of Colorado, was asked, how soon could you implement something like that at the state or local level or federal level? And he said 10 plus years. So the reality is, in the short term, the gasoline and fuel tax is the only way we're going to actually make significant increases, by raising that. So that's the only way we're going to do it. It's the most transparent, user-friendly way, And right now, 98% of all vehicle miles traveled use gasoline and diesel. So unfortunately, there is no silver magic bullet here. In the short term, we have to look at adjusting the fuel tax. And then as we go down the road, we have to be ready to transition into looking at some alternative ways to pay for this. But again, I think a lot of folks, raising the fuel tax isn't always a popular thing to do, but it is the right thing to do, and that's why the U.S. Chamber is pushing to get that done this year.
Right. So there's no panacea or anything that's going to solve all of our problems.
Correct.
But we do need to adjust that gas tax.
Absolutely. Yep.
That's interesting. So in Arizona, continuing on the transportation issue, we're a hotbed for autonomous vehicle testing. A lot of transportation observers have talked about how this technology is going to change things like transit systems, commuting, whether we're even going to need to purchase our own vehicles in the future, or we'll just call for a self-driving car when we need to get somewhere. Do you think this new technology is going to shake up the infrastructure needs and the infrastructure funding as well, and how so might it?
I think it is, and that's why as we're talking about modernizing the system, we got to make sure we have an infrastructure that can allow for autonomous vehicles. Again, we built our highways in the 50s and 60s, and so as we're modernizing this infrastructure, we need to make sure things like 5G, sensors that autonomous vehicles need so they can operate, we have to do that. We're probably not going to build a lot of new highways in this country, so we have to figure out through technology how to utilize our current infrastructure more efficiently. And so autonomous vehicles are a big part of that solution. And what we're finding around the country is communities that provide multiple transportation options are the communities that are attracting the young millennial workforce. I know when I turned 16, you became an adult when you got your driver's license. Young people today don't even want a car. They don't want the driver's license. So making sure we have that 21st century infrastructure to handle those types of changing needs. The communities that are addressing this are the ones that are going to succeed. The ones that are a little slower to embrace those changes are going to have struggles attracting that high-skilled workforce.
That sounds true. Although I'm an old millennial, technically,
Okay.
And I love driving the big, wide open roads here in Arizona. But I see it in my younger millennial peers, where they're not even remotely interested in a driver's license or a car. They just want to make sure they can get from point A to point B. So huge behavior changes.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, those are all the questions I have for you. Are there any final comments you would want the Arizona Chamber's Facebook Live audience to know? Or
Well, we would encourage you all to talk to your elected officials, let them know infrastructure investment's important. I know that the I-10 widening project is going on out here, and making sure that we continue to make those types of investments to make sure Arizona has a good infrastructure that allows you not just to be able to move within the state, but throughout the country is very important. So talking to your elected officials, letting them know this is an important issue to the business community is going to be real critical for us getting federal action in the next year.
And I would add that the U.S. Chamber is maintaining a website called taxreformforamerica.com. If you visit that, you can click through our interactive map, which will allow you to see all different businesses who have benefited from tax reform and how they've passed along those benefits to their workers or to their community in the form of increased wages or bonuses or increased training programs, charitable giving. You can not only see who is doing what in your community, but you're also able to share your story there. So if you have a story, if tax reform has benefited you, I would strongly encourage you to visit taxreformforamerica.com and to share your story.
Excellent. Thank you guys so much. Caroline Harris and Ed Mortimer from the U.S. Chamber. We love the Arizona Chamber, loves the U.S. Chamber, so we're so glad you could come here today.
Thanks for having us, Brandy. The feeling is mutual.
Wonderful, wonderful. Good. And she has great dogs. I learned. Thank you.